my Termina video is doing. Let's check the analytics. Well, I have a video to write. Well, this was, yeah, a lot more than I expected. I want to start this off by thanking everyone so much. Jumping from something like 14 subscribers to over 200 in under a week is insane. The reception has been totally crazy, and I am eternally grateful. The discussion this video spawned is insane, and I've really enjoyed reading all these comments, which is why I'm going to dedicate this video to that. Promoting all the insight that people gave me, because, I'll be honest, my research was lacking, and I'm glad everyone was willing to provide more info. Starting off, first, I just want to disperse a few misconceptions people had. I've known Marina is trans since back in the demo. I didn't mention it because I didn't find it necessary, but thinking back to it, I probably should have just to make it clear. Another misconception people seem to have was about the video itself. I think some people were expecting full character analysis, which is not what I was really going for, and I'm sorry if I've misled anyone. I decided to focus more on the moon scorched form specifically, because, it's actually been quite some time since I seriously sat down and played Termina. Months, so forgive my rustiness. If I remember correctly, the last time I played was, I think, when Sprint was added. So, yeah, been a bit. One final thing before we actually get to the meat of the video. I saw there were a couple of, Osa fans that weren't very happy with my opinion on his moon scorched. And I won't lie, I did him dirty. I love Osa as well. It's hard not to. And after some people pointed some stuff out to me, I do like his moon scorched form more, but I still think it's kind of lame. I'm sorry, I just do. At least we can all agree that normal Osa has the best design of the contestants, right? Right? Anyways, let's actually get to reading comments. Sorry, just wanted to do that again. That's the only time Sorry. Anyways, shout out to the one guy who said whimpering audio when and got no likes. Actually, no, what am I saying? No, don't shout him out. Starting with Osa, I got quite a few good explanations of what his form could mean. This first comment is by Ranger2486, who says, Osa's moon scorched form to me resembles a brain and its neurons having completely taken over his head, perhaps suggesting how Osa's knowledge and wisdom have literally taken control of him. As for the floating eye in his hand, it represents him reaching enlightenment, with his perspective changing to outside of his own head. This is why Osa's body mostly looks the same except the head, since he's always cared more knowledge and spirituality rather than his own physical body. I actually really like the idea of the perspective being outside the body to show just how much he's ascended. You could also kind of make an argument about how it's kind of the body horror aspect of it, where you're literally forced outside your own body while looking back at it. Symbolizing maybe a loss of control? Wojik Can't Rest, however, offers, I interpreted his transformation as his knowledge or his quest for it blinding him, with the whole floating eye being representative of Nasra guarding him. And this is interesting as well, because you do kind of wonder what the hell happens to Nasra if Osa transforms. Imagine a big moon-scorched Nasra who looks like Valtiel. That would piss Nasra off the most. There is different takes on Osa, however, with Marina P having this to say. It feels fair to say for most characters, the moon scorch represents their insecurities. Osa is on a mission to seek power through knowledge, so it makes sense that Mastermind has an enlarged head. It implies to me that he attains some kind of enlightenment via the process of moon scorch. That said, he knows that his current situation of following Nasra is a counter to his personal values, and it weighs on him. I think the fact that he has a disembodied eyeball implies that while his new form has knowledge, it continues to lack agency, as he's now literally being guided by sight outside of himself. The comparison to mumblers is pretty apt when you consider those creatures are mindless servants of the god of the depths. The only wrench here is the fact that greater mumblers exist, as they are implied to have agency following the return of their consciousness, though they are said to function differently from people, so it's hard to say if Mastermind himself has agency. Maybe instead of my original thought that he now lacks agency, it's more like he found enlightenment on someone else's terms. So perhaps he is a master of his own mind still, hence the name, but no longer has a view in the world he sought mastery over. In his ending B, he gets to create his own system of magic, divorced from the old gods where he is still human. This is true enlightenment, much like Enki and Nosramus, who turned away from ascension. Basically, I think Osa's Moonscorched is focused mainly on turning against his values, by allowing himself to get overtaken by some other force in exchange for knowledge. Even if he retains his free will, he is no longer a human. I think he really could legit be a greater mumbler TBH. I'm kinda tired while writing this, so my bad if this is rambling. That is entirely fine, Marina. I thought it was a great comment. Very interesting as well. Very fitting for a yellow mage whose whole philosophy revolves around accepting the gods but not revering them and instead using them. It could be like you say, where in this Moonscorched form he gained enlightenment at the will of an old god, in turn disrespecting his entire philosophy, getting corrupted and becoming like a mumbler in the process. Really good interpretation, and honestly my personal favorite. At the same time, Goober 145 is a more simple explanation. Ahem, in all caps. Here with an Osa explanation. His Moonscorched is called Mastermind, first of all. It has a really big brain, emphasizing the fact that Osa's intellect is really all he has. The bigger part of this comes from the master part of Mastermind. Osa's goal is to be in control of his own destiny. He does this by joining the Yellow Mages, a selfish group of mages who do everything in their power to only care about themselves, and no one else. Hence, he is the master of his own mind, or mastermind. Yeah, I understand this interpretation completely. However, I feel like it misses out on a lot of nuance that could be had just by looking at the design. Kind of like looking at only part of a picture rather than the full painting. Thank you for the idea though. Alice B has a similar take to some of the previous ones, but it comes out different in execution, which I find interesting. Osa is actually a type of enemy in Fear and Hunger 1! Exclamation mark. A yellow mage. A disciple of the mage Nasra, and by extension Grogoroth. It is, I believe, mentioned in the games that the wielder always loses himself to the power gained from Grogoroth's worship. The tumor-like bit growing there where Osa's head should be, I think, probably represents the knowledge and subsequent powers he gained taking control over him. The powers that once gave him agency, now reducing him to only an instrument of Grogoroth's lust for destruction/death. That's my take at least. I like this more Grogoroth-centered take on it. If I was a god and a whole group of people were flipping me the birdie at the same time using my cool magic, I'd be pretty pissed too. And it has that whole dark allure of magic to it. You know, the whole kind of thing of like, oh, you can play with fire, but be careful not to get burnt. Finally, to wrap up the Osa section, we have a comment from Constantine Casablancas. Ooh, I like that name. Who says, Osa's Moonscorched form can actually be seen in the Book of Enlightenment, ... So, I guess this is what you look like when you reach the highest level of enlightenment? And then a little dude shrugging. And yeah, you can kind of see it right there. I'm unsure what it's supposed to represent, but I guess this is just what enlightenment looks like? Or it could be someone's interpretation of enlightenment. Maybe Osa read this and subconsciously fears this is what he'll turn into? The next contestants individually don't have this many comments, so it should breeze by quicker. Vance, nice pun PFP by the way, says, interesting thing about Levi's Moonscorched form is that if you talk to him when you reach the white bunker, he'll say how he feels like nothing but a scope behind a rifle, looking for his next moving target. His Moonscorched form is pretty much a literal representation of how he feels about himself. I actually wasn't aware of this line's existence because I never had him that late game, but really hammers the symbolism in. Yellow Rue offers, just wanted to add, Levi is just a naked dude. This is a deliberate design choice, as we see others retain their clothes upon transformation, or their bodies are no longer recognizable as humans in Moonscorch fashion, both as a child and as literal cannon fodder on the battlefield. Also could mention that being so jacked is a representation of the adult things he's done. He uses guns, becomes a gun, takes heroin and fights wars, becomes an adult. It makes me think back to the phrase, war makes men. And this, taken literally, where he's just barely an adult, yet he's forced to deal with horrors unimaginable, and he just has to live with it. Everything about his design carries an air of vulnerability, and I think it really speaks. Onto Miss Sawyer, there were 2 comments pointing out the same thing, but they both had their own insight, so I'll read them both out. First is by, forgive me if my pronunciation is off, Aparapinica, who says, "Great video. Something worth mentioning about Karen's transformation is that the design is heavily based on The Defense of Semper by Akseli Gallen-Kallela, a super famous painter here in Finland. Although the name Valkyrie is in reference to Scandinavian mythology, the creature depicted in the painting, Lohi, is specifically a part of Finnish mythology, being the warden/ruler of the afterlife and dead." I'll put the painting up now so you can see what it looks like, and yeah, wow, that really does look like Karen's Moonscorch form. User, chimed in with, "Sorry if someone mentioned this already, but Moonscorch Karen is also a very clear reference to the painting Samun Pulostus by Finnish artist Akseli Gallen-Kallela, and the myth behind it, where a witch turns herself into a giant bird and carries her men on her back to steal a magical artifact back. Though I'm not sure if that relates to Karen as a character in any meaningful way, or if it's just that way since the painting could be the first thing Mira thought when thinking of a woman turning into a bird of prey. Yeah, as someone who's very much not from Finland, this was my first time hearing about this, so it's actually been pretty interesting looking this up. From the very brief research I did online, I found out that aside from what was pointed out here, Lohi is also sometimes interchanged with the goddess Loviatar, who is seemingly a goddess of plagues and diseases. You could make the loose connection here that because of her career, Karen seems to spread war wherever she goes, but at the same time, it's more so just likely that Mira was inspired by the painting, the same way he was inspired by Francis Bacon for the villagers' designs. Onto Olivia now. Mantadream states, "For mechanical dance, I also wonder what the ribbon-like red things on her pyramidal frame represent. Personally, I think they could represent muscle fibers, and possibly her real legs? They hang limply and appear torn and flimsy, perhaps mirroring how others perceived Olivia's crippled legs. This is a really interesting idea, and I like where you're going with it. However, it is important to note that ribbons over air conditioning is a thing I've seen people do. For what purpose? I don't know. I think to test if it's working? Although, in saying that, that doesn't discredit your theory at all." Aquatic Insanity mentions, "I've always thought Mechanical Dance's base really resembles Pyramid Head's helmet. We all know Miro is a fraud and a hack. No. We all know Miro loves references, and he loves Silent Hill. Especially in Termina, with the entirety of the apartments being a very clear reference to Silent Hill 4 The Room. So I wouldn't doubt it." Designated Loser made one of the only Dawn comments, stating, "For Dawn's Moonscorch form, I view it more so as Rur continuing to be the boomer god. His servants in Termina want the girl in order to prevent anyone from rivaling the power of the old gods, and Dawn has a bajillion links to the sulfur god. Pocket Cat possessing him could be another one of those attempts, even though it's somewhat unclear what the sulfur god's hand in the situation is. I agree completely. Time and time again, the old gods have been way too stuck up to let anyone in the cool kids club, so I totally could see Rur desperately trying to stop anyone from getting in." Onto Abella, Nathan Beard retorts my claim, saying, "Something doesn't sit right with me for the facehugger theory for Abella's form. In her transformation animation, it looks like a bunch of her body mass went to her head to form the elephant shape. She loses any sort of femininity to her figure, as you can see from her clothes not fitting her. To me, this shows how she was so tired of the men in her field taking advantage of her that she desired to lose any recognizability as a woman. Everything but pure muscle was moved up to her head, covering her hair and face. The reason it's an elephant is because elephants symbolize wisdom and overcoming obstacles, traits that Abella possessed because she has to in order to succeed in her field. Rather than her body just transforming because of the facehugger, she too was moonscorched to represent her true nature, most likely caused by being in an environment that reminded her of her profession, the maintenance tunnels where Shognar is encountered. I really like the elephant idea going with this one, and I agree that her design speaks to female rage in some way. But this comment actually got me thinking about something else, which I'm kind of surprised I didn't think about before. When working in such dangerous conditions, especially post-wartime, it wouldn't be insane to think she might have been wearing a gas mask a lot of the time. There'd be a lot of fumes you don't want to ingest, and the gas mask would help against that. This could explain the trunk, as simply it being the tubing from the mask. Granted, I've never worked in mechanics, especially not during the 1940s, so do I know if they use gas masks? No, but it is very plausible. It could be her mind remembered the gas masks, and decided to use those to, again, like you said, cover up any bit of femininity. Onto, Henrik. Goober, again, you damn hoodlum. Right, I have an explanation for Henrik. Henrik states that he never wanted to be a chef, and instead wanted to be an artist, which is why the gentleman is so focused on the artistic side of food. The gentleman also tries to be very deep and sophisticated, but he fails, only acknowledging the surface-level beauty of food, which is probably why Henrik failed as an artist. He tries too hard to be elegant in order to meet societal norms, hence the gentleman. Actually, adding quite a lot of depth to a pretty 2D character. I really like the idea that he's just trying way too hard to be artsy, and instead just comes off as a stupid poser. I think it really fits Henrik. However, the true Henrik theory comes from user FemiFemFemarius, who, when I clicked on their channel, I saw they posted this. And I kind of love it. Link in description. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. This is what they had to say. This might be a very stupid remark, but Henrik's Moonscorch looks like a Polish food called pierogi, and his name is also Polish, and he's a chef. 1, 2, 3 exclamation marks. He turned into pierogi. 1, 2, 3 exclamation marks. Literally 500 IQ. 1, 2, 3 exclamation marks. Yeah, I kind of love this fan theory. I mean, it makes sense. It's the only really way I can describe his face. He turned into pierogi. Genius. Onto Marina. Our Sen amulet had this to say. For Marina, I believe the cocoon takes the shape of her father, since she was originally supposed to follow the path of her father and be a priest. But her mother told everyone she was a girl and she grew up as one, and is still comfortable as one. Common trans femme win. True. She still believes she has to take the role of her father, which she hates. I never stopped and considered it in that way, where she feels she's literally tied to her father's fate. Really interesting take on the design. Next, we have Jormungandr 1987, who was quick to point out how wrong I was with the scorpion theory, and yeah, it kind of sucked. I won't lie, I don't know what I was thinking, but here's what someone who actually is knowledgeable about scorpions has to say. I would like to add something to the Marina Moonscorch form theory of scorpions. Scorpions do not sting the females just to assert dominance. First of all, is that scorpions are immune to their venoms of their own species. So instead of killing their mating partner, they're just becoming sleepy so scorpions can fertilize them, because if they didn't, females would eat them alive, full caps. It is not for dominance. Male scorpions just want to live. I wanted to say it because knowing about animals is basically one of the few things I have going on, and other people don't want to listen to me, XD. It's okay, Jormungandr. I'll listen to you. And I'll put you in a video, too. But yeah, really drums in how wrong I was, but oh well, that's what theorizing is all about. Finally, Otto Pippinger points out that Marina's scorched form is reminiscent of the end of the Junji Ito story. I think it's called Head of the Family or something like that, where the eldest son has to connect to the centipede of his father's forehead and crap runs after his wife in the story, which both visually and thematically fit her story / relation to her father. I'm embarrassed I didn't get this, genuinely. People who know me know I'm a massive Junji Ito fan. I should have seen this quicker. Tanaka time. Vinny has this to say. I think why Tanaka's Moonscorch form has a whip is so he can whip himself. Something called flagellant is because he uses pain as a motivation to keep the grind going. Just as slave owners are shown to whip their slaves to make them work harder / faster, Tanaka does this to himself. At least that's my best guess. I like that theory, with Tanaka literally punishing himself to work better. Very fitting with the idea of Koroshi and death by work. User, Jishoishite, I think, had this to say. I guess Tanaka's Moonscorch form also shows his own inner dissonance. At the start he says that he was some kind of ambassador with a noble mission, but if you use mind reading he says something like, how could one believe this? Later on, if he survives, he actually grows more as a person, trains with Marco to become a hero. I believe he said once that he wanted to protect others from the terrorists. Possibly Judgment name comes from that inner conflict, as he became a good person but cannot forget that he literally came for money and nothing else, trying to use others suffering for war in his own interests. Interesting, this could fit in more with the whole self-punishment angle to this design, with the whip and the torture device placed on his neck. Really adds more character as well. Finally on the home stretch, Sammy Mary. User Ben Pasco offered this. I've always believed the trans Samurai headcanon, in part because of the Moonscorch form's name, so it's an interesting point you bring up about dysmorphia being different from dysphoria. The other big reason I believe is it comes from the fact that Marina doesn't recognize her at all. My theory on that was Samurai transitioned after they knew each other. I can't wait for it to be playable so we can finally get some answers. Everything we know about Samurai just raises more questions. What's going on in Marina's ending B? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah, I'm with you there. I have no clue what the hell that even was supposed to be, but I'm excited. On the note of Samurai transitioning and causing Marina to not recognize her, I do quite like that idea, although in canon, I don't know how well it would really hold up, because Samurai was stalking Marina, so it's unclear if they ever actually met. Though, I just wanted to include this, just to say that headcanons are dope, and I support any and all. User Gerald, with this little axolotl PFP, had this to say. For me, Samurai's Moonscorch form is about her transforming herself into a version she sees herself, leading to the name, dysmorphia. We could see from her body figure and how she mutilated her face. Her genitalia could have also been removed by her Moonscorch, but it kind of looks like pants to me. But there's one more interesting thing, and it's how she calls herself radiating, which could refer to the fact that she hated her old body, so much so that even a hulking, monstrous form like that would seem so much better for her. Or maybe it's because she has a radiating soul, but I don't know, just my theory. A Gerald theory. And yeah, I would agree. It would make sense for Samurai to have body issues, causing her to love her Moonscorch form instead. Plays into the whole name of dysmorphia. Alright, we're almost home. Last comment, and it is from a James Parker. And I've been saving this one for last because holy, it is a motherload of a comment. So let's just dive right in. Some things to consider. 1. Don's Moonscorch form, the Pocket Cat. You're pretty much spot on. He gives into despair and accepts a deal with the Pocket Cat to don the mask. This is his destiny, however, and would inevitably resort to it even without the Termina events. Yeah, it feels very disconnected from the events of the festival and just kind of happens regardless, so it stands to reason it would happen outside of the festival as well. 2. Osa's Moonscorch form, the Mastermind, is a reflection of his desire for knowledge. Also worth noting is how accepting he is when he becomes Moonscorched. He's the only character to not scream in agony during the transformation, and only mutters something like, "so be it," if scorched outside the tower. This is another really interesting thing that plays into the theory of him accepting enlightenment from or some other god. 3. Olivia's Moonscorch form, the Mechanical Dance, is indeed a reflection of her reliance for machinery, i.e. her wheelchair, for the rest of her life and how she feels people perceive her. However, her arms are long blades, not poles. Also worth noting is that her sister has been transformed into Logic, the machine god. That is true, although I figured it didn't have much relevance towards her transformation specifically, but you could make a funny comparison between them both turning into machines. Karen's Moonscorch form, the Valkyrie. You're correct that it's a reflection of how she and the other war journalists are compared to vultures, and while Karen regards herself a Valkyrie by ensuring the soldiers' stories are told, her form is a flagrant mockery of the two, like most of the Moonscorch forms. Ver is a trickster god, so it does stand to reason that these are all just sick jokes to him. 5. Levi's Moonscorch form, the Weeping Scalp. You're also... Weeping Scalp? You're also pretty much spot on. It's to do with his trauma as a child soldier, and yes, you are correct. The resemblance from the manga is intentional. Cool. Glad to know I'm right there. 6. Mako's Moonscorch form, the Giant, is a reflection of the guilt he carries for having killed someone in his past, and how he believes people perceive him. The fact that he's murdered someone before is reflected in the corpse that he's constantly dragging and throwing around. Literally dragging his guilt along with him wherever he goes. Abella's Moonscorch form, the Shognar, is one that's up for debate, but I think most people in the fan community have determined something that you took note of. The fact that she might have been latched onto by a facehugger enemy. I think her Moonscorch form is meant to reflect her pent-up rage. That would make sense as well, with the feminine perspective I put on it, being her undervalued as a female mechanic. Marina's moon-scorched form, the cocoon, is exactly this, a cocoon, which is growing out of where Marina's head should be. It's meant to be a reflection of her father's oppression against her. Nothing at all to do with scorpions, but an interesting observation. Also, it's actually Marina who's confirmed to be trans, not Sae-Marie. Speaking of which... 9. Sae-Marie's moon-scorched form, the dysmorphia, is exactly what you said. A reflection on how she perceives herself. However, her becoming moon-scorched isn't entirely self-inflicted. She basically loses her mind after killing Marina's father and believes this will win her over. Sae-Marie's been a long-time stalker of Marina. However, after being rejected by her, or by having her not turn up at all, this is the trigger for her to transform. Yeah, this is actually something I realized after a bit more reflection, considering you can actually save her, so it's not as if she used some summoning magic, she just fully lost it. Tanaka's moon-scorched form, the Judgment. You've pretty much nailed perfectly. Just FYI, the box is some sort of device with which people use to help extend their necks. 11. Henrik's moon-scorched form, the Gentleman. You're partially right about. It's triggered by his focusing on food and the source of the ticking he hears. However, his form is a reflection of his obsession on respectful behavior. It explains why he is one of the 2 moon-scorched contestants who isn't openly hostile towards you. The other one is Levi. He'll openly run away from you instead of confronting you. Also, those ears are antlers. Yeah, I remembered that afterwards, because of the dialogue at the dinner table you can say to him. Caligula's moon-scorched form, the Monster, resembles a toad with a load of balls because of his sexual depravity. He can attempt to essay Abella and Karen if they sleep in the mayor's house and force them to fight to the death. Even his backstory depicts him having a severe lack of morals. 13. While he currently doesn't have a moon-scorched form, Pav was originally written to have one, except Mira didn't end up using it. However, it's been hinted that he might be adding it to a game later on. Nothing about August yet, though. Well, looks like if Pav gets a moon-scorched form, I'll have my work cut out for me then. But, that said, I just want to say a huge thank you to James and every other one of you that commented on this video. I really can't say enough how much the support means to me, and I'm really glad I could start a discussion about a game that I enjoy. But with that, I'm out. Peace.